Hey folks, welcome back to the Dyson Sphere program, and welcome back to another sped up episode. So I got some feedback on last episode, and it seemed to be well received, so we're going to do one more, and then we'll go back to the long play format. For this episode, we're working on super magnetic rings and Deuteron fuel rods. And again, that's all stuff you've seen me do before, and mostly the only interesting thing here is the bigness of the build, so I figured we'd do one more fast episode, and then we'll go back to the good stuff. You can see here I'm putting down a bunch of advanced miners. I need quite a large amount of iron ore here for the magnets and iron ingots that will eventually be turned into super magnetic rings. I needed about 6,000 per minute, so the 3 miners mostly got me there, and then I'll fine-tune them by speeding up their collecting to about 150%. Something like 6,500 ore per minute that I needed for this build. So with the miners set down, next up comes making magnets. And really, what I've learned is that you want to build a blueprint that is reusable, not just for producing the item itself, but that makes sense as a template for some other build. So I end up reusing, I think, the circuit board and the Dyson Sphere component blueprints and just repurposing them by changing the recipe and the inputs and outputs on the tower. So you can see here, as this is going down, I'm questioning why the blueprint is missing some smelters. We'll fix that sooner or later. But I'm also going to change the inputs and outputs on the tower here. So we're going to call in raw iron ore, and we're going to change everything to magnets here. Change the output to magnets, and then finish up the actual blueprint. There should be 40 smelters in this. I'm not sure why there weren't. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but with the build complete, we're going to save this blueprint for later reuse in case we need it, or as a template for another blueprint. And so I'm going to follow my naming convention and put down the number of smelters and the amount of output that it produces. So this is 40 magnet smelters, and you can see I'm doing some math in my head. Each smelter puts out something like 50 magnets per minute, and so the name of the blueprint is 40 magnet smelters, parentheses, 2,000. You can see we're taking in 1,600 iron ore to produce these. And the actual amount I needed was a little bit more, so I made and saved the blueprint first, and then I'm extending it a little bit. The amount of ore on each line was like 800, because it was taking in 1,600, so there's plenty of room for more. The belts can support up to 1,800 ore per minute, and there's 2 of them, so that's 3,600. So we plop down the extras, connect up the belts, power everything. You can see here I'm double checking my numbers. We need 66 magnet smelters for this build. There's everything connected up. One more satellite substation will get us what we need. And I turn on the demand for ore, and everything powers on. It all looks great. So there we can go. There we can see everything's working. Next, I'll check. I need 42 iron ingot smelters. So here's this weird blueprint again, where it says 40, but then it only has 28. I think there's 7 times 4, so let's put the other 12 in. And now we have 40. I'm pretty sure I then save this blueprint, yeah, so that I get rid of that mistake. So the next time I build this, it will come out with 40 instead of 28, for whatever reason that was about. And then we just need 2 more. So that's easy enough to smack on the end there like this. There we go, there's our iron ingots all done. Next up, we're gonna need some copper. So let's take a look at the flowchart here. I'm gonna need 14 copper ingot smelters. So we'll go find some veins and throw down a miner. And then we'll set down our smelter blueprint. We already have that one ready to go, so this one should be pretty straightforward, I think. We just put it down, and then, yeah, we just delete 20 of these, and then 6 more from the other side. Make sure all the inputs are correct on the tower. Delete the extra 6, and we're done with iron ingots, or copper ingots, rather. So next up is gears. We need 15 gear assemblers to take the iron ingots, or some of the iron ingots we just made. And gears take 1 input. So I'm trying to figure out which blueprint has a single belt that I can reuse. And I was looking at the proliferator, but it seemed too big, too messy. So I'm going to come over here, and I think I end up reusing the circuit board assembler, and I'm just going to carve it down. So I did notice I had a problem here. There were 2 assemblers missing their outputs in the blueprint. So before we move any further, I'm going to save the fix. So that's the fix to the circuit board blueprint. And somewhere out there, there may be one of these with that problem, and I don't know if I'll ever find it. So again, the circuit boards have 2 inputs, gears only have 1, so we're going around and removing all the extra crap here. This is another reason that I feel this sped up footage is like useful, like the speed up episode's nice, because like literally sitting there and watching me click on those sorters one at a time to delete them would be pretty painful. But I'm doing this work now, we're speeding it up, and then the next time I need a blueprint that just has 1 belt, I can definitely grab the gear blueprint, and we won't have that problem in the future. So, because there's only 1 belt, we can narrow this by 2 tiles, one on each side of the input belt. So I'm going to go ahead and take the time to do that to make the blueprint as compact as possible. And of course, realistically, we could fit in even more if we really wanted to. There's that kind of space in between the assembler wings where I have the power satellite substations. We could squeeze a couple more in there, maybe. But a little bit of space is okay. And it makes it, like, easy to use. Easy to set up the power and everything, so I think it's fine. Even though we only need 14, I am going to build the full 40 because I want to be able to reuse this blueprint in the future. So you'll see I'm going to set up all 40 and then delete. Once I have the blueprint saved, I'll delete an entire wing plus 6 more, and then we'll have our 14 assemblers making gears from iron ingots to go into our blue ring production. So I'm checking the math to figure out, you know, what are the numbers for the blueprint's name. And I really should change... This really doesn't belong in ingots. Yeah, no, I've put it into tower builds. And you can see we're making 2250 gears per minute from 30 gear assemblers based on 1800 iron ingots. So there's another useful blueprint for use in the future. And now we'll carve out the crap we don't need. Did I get the other 6? Oh, okay, I remember now. Now I'm trying to see if there's a better place to put this. And I figure that little niche there seemed like a good place, but then I decided, no, I'll just leave this thing where it is. I can't remember if I deleted the 6 that I don't need. Looks like I didn't. I just moved on. So we're producing a few more gears and using a few more ingots than we actually have there, but hopefully the system, like, hopefully there's enough extra ingots in the system to make up for that. So next up is coils, magnetic coils. Those take magnets and copper. So we'll change the tower, we'll set up our belts, we'll change the recipe on the assemblers. And then we'll save the blueprint, I believe. Yep, doing the math in my head. How many are we making? I'm not sure if it's worth doing, because I'm not sure I'll ever need, like, from this point onwards, I'm definitely going to be using that flow calculator tool. And so that deals in number of machines. I don't know if I actually need to know the numbers that are produced, but I don't know. Sometimes I kick things down the road. I say, I don't need that. And then it turns out that I do. So taking a minute here to figure it out before I save the blueprint doesn't seem that onerous. So I'm counting numbers of machines here to figure out... yes, we have a problem. So the machines output more than the belts can actually carry. So I'm throwing down some pile sorters there, some backwards pile side sorters, to stack the input from the first 1800 coils And that leaves room on the belt for the remaining 3 machines that come after it. But then, of course, once I have the blueprint saved, I have to delete the extra, and then we're done with magnetic coils. So we turn everything on, we make sure it all works. And it all looks good, so we move on to motors. Now we're going to need 37 motor producers. Looking for a place to put those, and right here seems fine. We'll reuse the Dyson sphere component blueprint because it has 3 belts, and what we need for motors are 3 belts. Trying to figure out what's going on here, and I ended up just moving it up here, I think. Yeah, there we go. So it's the same process, right? It's the same pattern. Once you learn the pattern of how to like adapt a blueprint and update it, it becomes kind of rote, where it's no longer interesting to watch because, and again, that's why I'm speeding this up. It's like, how many times can you watch me throw down a blueprint, change all the inputs, like copy and paste the correct recipe, test it, and move on? Doesn't seem that interesting to me. So it's why I chose to make a second one of these sped up episodes. This was like 3 hours of gameplay, which would have been 4 episodes. And instead we condense it down to 1, and I just kind of walk you through what I'm doing. Seems like a good plan to me. Seems like a reasonable choice. So yeah, here's 40 assemblers, or 30 assemblers making motors. Looks like we're putting out 1,125 per minute. And I don't think, what did we need? 37, I think? I think that's right. So I'm figuring out the input numbers now because there's slightly different ratios. And then we're going to need 7 more of these. So I think what I end up doing is I either... Do I make another copy of this? Yeah, I make another copy of this and then I shave it down and move the shaved... I make like a temporary blueprint to move the shaved thing. Because it's so narrow that I figure I can fit it in somewhere else. So you can see we only needed 7 more. So I figure I can probably move this somewhere a little bit more handy. Or I can wedge it in somewhere where I couldn't fit something else is the idea. So yeah, you'll see, you see I made the 1 blueprint. I come over here and try and squeeze this in here. Doesn't quite work. I can squeeze it in right there. There we go. Right above the tropic line. Add a little bit of power, turn everything on. For some reason, it didn't want to put the logistics distributor here, so I did that manually. Turn it all on, and here comes the goodies. We're now making all the motors we need for our build. Right. So, the second to last step is electromagnetic turbines. Those take in the motors we just built, plus I think more copper. Was that right? So we'll take another circuit board blueprint and update and adapt it to make electromagnetic turbines instead. Here, I'm throwing down an ILS real quick because I've run out of belts and sorters. And so this was a great tip from Justin Clements, where as long as you have those, like I think I was importing them to the North Pole of Better Dyson 2, but they're in the system, right? If I ask for them, they'll come here in a minute and a half. So I just throw that tower down. And then I get on with updating this blueprint to work for electromagnetic turbines. And I'll come back over to the ILS, take out my belts and sorters, and then delete the tower. So instead of having to warp home and pick them up manually from the mall, I just call them here and then we're done. So there's 30 electromagnetic turbine assemblers. You can see we make 30 recipes per minute, so multiply 30 by 30, you get 900, multiply that by 1.25 because everything's proliferated, and you get 1125. And there's that blueprint done. So we didn't need 30, we needed, I guess, 20... What did I delete? 6? 24? Is that right? Yeah, 24. And so now we're on to blue ring producers. 22 of those we need. So I'm checking how many inputs the blue rings need. It looks like they need 3. So we'll reuse a blueprint that already does 3, which is motors. No big deal. We only need 22 of these, so like half of these are going to get deleted. But let's set the blueprint up first in case we need 40 of them for some reason in the future. So there we've set the inputs, magnets, graphite, and the turbines we just built. Paste in the recipe, set the input-output on the belts. And then the other thing I was realizing as I was building this is I don't know if my energetic graphite is going to come in proliferated or not. I can't remember if I did it. I think I did because lately everything that I've been building, I've been proliferating from raw to final product. But I'm not sure, so we're going to go check. You can see here I'm saving the blueprint. 30 blue ring assemblers makes 750, but we don't need that many. So once we have the blueprint saved, which is about to happen, we'll delete half of these, or almost half. So 15 becomes what? What did I delete there? I deleted 8. So 30 minus 8 is 22. And you can see here, I've called in the, I've gone up to the inputs at the North Pole and requested the energetic graphite. And now I'm just sitting here waiting to see if it comes back proliferated or not. And I sat here for like a minute and a half, and in my head I was going, it's fine, the footage will be sped up. But it does mean we have another 15 seconds of looking at this screen. So how's your day going? What are you up to? What are you playing? Leave me a comment. I'd love to know. Good news. I'm very excited. The energetic graphite is coming in proliferated, so everything should work. And indeed it does. Once we turn the turbine factory on, it begins coming over and going into our blue ring factory, and so our blue rings are done. Let's take a screenshot to commemorate that. If I can get my guy to stand where I want him to. Ka-chink. There's the screenshot. And now we're on to Deuteron fuel rods. So there are the blue rings going into the system, and now we're off to Better Dyson 2 to build a billion fractionating loops. I did the math on what I'm going to need for my 420 carrier rockets per minute, and we need something like 10,000 deuterium per minute, which is an absolutely insane amount. So we have a huge 100 graphene chem plant setup, which is outputting 50 fractionator loops already. We needed like another 50. And even if we call in all the deuterium we can get from our gas giant, Gassy Steve, that we found last episode, it's not enough. So we need to fractionate another 50 loops or so to make up the difference. And so what I'm doing here is I'm making sure I have the throughput on helium and deuterium. So all 5 of my towers at the North Pole here on Better Dyson 2, all 5 of them are going to be requesting hydrogen and deuterium. And so I'm making sure all of them have warpers and can send their vessels out to the gas giant to get what they need. And then, because I need 2 slots on every tower, we're also going to have to move some things around. So this tower was requesting fire ice, but I needed its slot for hydrogen and deuterium, so we're going to move the fire ice to another tower. And then we're going to do the same thing with like titanium and chem plants here. We need those slots. I want 5 towers worth of throughput to make sure we can meet demand. So a lot of what's happening on screen now is me moving things from one tower to another and like manually pushing the resources from one tower to another, so I don't have to delete like 10,000 titanium alloy. There we go. And then just making sure that I have deuterium and hydrogen requested on every single tower. You may have noticed a quick little achievement up there. That was for having, I think, 50 vessels in interstellar flight at the same time, which is a warning to me that I might be approaching my limit on warpers. Like, I've been building a lot of ILS in a lot of different star systems, and isn't that cool? I took a screenshot there too. So we might run into warper problems. And getting more green science is no small feat. It involves strange matter, which is yet more hydrogen and deuterium or something. So I really hope we don't come up against that, but we might see the ILS getting sluggish if I don't have enough warpers. We'll have to keep an eye on that. I had to take a detour here because, as you can see, the titanium ran out at this little whatever this is on Clement Star. And in my head, I was like, okay, I don't know who's using these titanium crystals, and I really don't care. I'm not going to track it down. I'm just going to go get some titanium ore somewhere and ship it here so that even though this vein ran out, this thing can keep going, and whatever like ridiculous ancient production chain is involved, it'll keep working. And then I realized there's only like 300,000 titanium left in the system, so we got to go somewhere else. So I went over to, I found a planet that had like 16 million titanium on it over at Coal Town. So we named it Titanium Junction, and I'm going to go there and we're going to get titanium ore there and ship it back to Clement Star for that one little production line, whatever it is. And I'm realizing now, as I'm saying this, that I could have gone to one of those like rare ore resources and just made titanium crystals there and shipped them back to wherever. But that's not what I ended up doing. This was a cool opportunity to use my new planetary blueprint. You just saw me throw it down. So we made that last episode. I'm already using it. It throws down the power, you know, calls in warpers and deuterium. It calls in proliferator, sets up the power grid along with the defense. And you can see right next to the power grid, I found 2 titanium veins. So here's the ore we need. We're just going to finish setting up the planet and then clear out whatever bases we have from the hive and lock them down. And then ship the ore back to Clement Star and be done with it. It did turn into like a 45-minute detour, which happens a lot in this game. But it wasn't too bad. I mean, the planetary blueprint really sped things up. That probably saved me 20 minutes. And then I did have to kill 3 bases, which took a little bit more time. But better to kill them than have them, like, assault my infrastructure. So you can see here, I am requesting all of that titanium at the South Pole to send it out interstellar, so local demand, remote supply. Making sure everything's set up correctly. We've already got warpers from the blueprint. So really now it's just kill off the bases, set up starvation mechanisms to make sure that the hive here is busy for a while and doesn't bother me. And then head back to Clement Star to make sure everything's working. And then get back to making Deuteron fuel rods. So we got one more base to clear out, and then we're done here. So yeah, at this point of the game, it's very easy to kill these early bases. I mean, six missile turrets plus my, like, ground squadrons is more than enough. It's super easy. Just takes a minute. It's like, it's interesting. The Dark Fog kind of presents a challenge in the early game, but once you've played one playthrough, on a subsequent playthrough, they'll be trivial to deal with. And I guess there are difficulty options. I guess you can make them super aggressive. You can make them start much higher and level up much faster. So, like, if you're into that, it's available. But for me, like, I guess for me, the only real value they have is the rare drops that unlock certain technologies in the end game. So for me, I would probably set them to, like, the least aggression, the lowest level, and then, like, just drive them out of every system that I could. And then at the very end game, once I have, like, my Dyson star up, my first Dyson sphere up, and I'm at that point just messing around with numbers, like, then you can pick a planet, set up a farm, get the rare resources, and then, like, even after that, like, you're sort of done with them. Once you have unlocked whatever tech they're hiding behind their drops, like, then you don't need them at all. So then just, like, kill off the farm, kill off the hives, just drive them out forever and be done with them and build in peace. Anyway, we did take a quick pit stop there. I don't know if you noticed. We went back to Clement Star to make sure that the titanium ore was making it to its intended destination, which it was. And I decided I needed to take a quick pit stop here at the mall back on Allwade 3 to refill a few things and update a few of my logistics settings. So you know, we're restocking on things like foundation and weapons, ground forces, corvettes, destroyers, what have you. I think I'm going to pick up like some fusion plants and some satellite substations and a few other things. What am I doing here? Yeah, here's the satellite substations. These have proved extremely valuable. I like them a lot. The satellite substations, the advanced miners, I would definitely beeline for them in a second playthrough. They are just such huge quality of life value. Also, I don't know if I'd mess around with anything other than lasers in terms of defense, because like trying to supply missiles and ammo to Gauss turrets and all that stuff, like, it's such a giant pain in the butt. The laser turrets are just easier. All you have to worry about there is making sure your grid has enough power, which is something you need to do anyway. And it's not like they use all that much, or you need that many. I mean, one battlefield analysis base and 2 laser turrets will hold off, like, I think it'll hold off raids from, like, up to level 12 or 13 or 14, maybe even. It's, like, enough. That, like, once you get that high, maybe you need a signal tower. But yeah, I mean, the default settings on the Dark Fog, it's not really that big of a deal, except in the very, very early game. So, back to better Dyson. We're trying to get these Deuteron fuel rods done, which means we're going to need to fractionate a lot of deuterium from hydrogen, but we know how to do that, so we might as well get started. I can't remember what I'm looking for yet. Yeah, so I was looking for where my existing deuterium was, because there's a massive graphene plant over there. There's like 100 graphene chemical plants and 50 fractionator loops there. And all that deuterium is currently going into a tower. And in my head, I wanted to build near that to make sure that I could use it properly. So we're going to be making some deuterium. We're making more at that graphene plant. We need to make sure that the deuterium from our fractionation loops, and in particular, the deuterium from the chemical plants, from the graphene plant, is used first. We don't want to ship in deuterium from the gas giant, use that, and have the graphene plant back up, because we need the graphene plant operating at 100% to produce all the solar sails we're going to need to produce the Dyson sphere components to make the small carrier rocket. So, like, that whole thing needs to be running nonstop, which means we need to consume that deuterium. So that's why I was looking for it and came over to build it. Here you can see I'm getting started with a blueprint for fractionation loops. We're going to have inputs and outputs. Hydrogen comes in, deuterium comes out. And I think originally I was going to go for a 5x5 because 25 fractionator loops will consume exactly 1800 hydrogen per minute, which is what you can carry on one Mark III belt. But I didn't like the way the layout played, and additionally, I needed exactly 48 fractionator loops to meet my demand. So I ended up going 6x4 instead of 5x5, and it would have been too tall for my taste, so now it's not quite too tall. It's kind of just right. And so I got one line of 6 working, and here's the second line, the third line, and the fourth line. And this is going to be my blueprint for fractionator loops. It's 24 fractionator loops that produce 72 less than 1800 deuterium per minute. So what is that? That's like 1728 or something. So now comes the design phase where I figure out the output. Everything's going to connect up nice and neat. And I realized, yeah, I don't really like that. Let's redo that. There we go. So there's the output line for the deuterium. And now I figure I'll just use some splitters to make my life easy on taking the 1800 hydrogen per minute from the tower, which we'll eventually be building, and just split it onto all 4 of the rows of fractionators. So there's the splitters. I'll connect it up. And now I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do with the output tower, or the output line, and the answer is, well, if we're going to have a tower over here, we got to bring the output over here so that We can take the input from the tower and put the output into the tower. So last is the PLS. It's going to demand hydrogen and supply deuterium to whoever wants it. There are the satellite substations to power the whole blueprint. And there's the blueprint done. 24 fractionators producing 1728. Yes, that's the number. And because I need 48 loops, we can use exactly 2 of these blueprints, which is handy dandy. Spick and spandy. Is spandy a word? Spandy's not a word. What else rhymes with handy and dandy? Mandy? That's a name. Bandy? I guess you could say, like, that's not really a word, but you could be like, yeah, that cord is kind of rubber bandy. Candy? I'm going through the alphabet, folks. Okay, so we're gonna build our fractionator loops. We're gonna check that everything works. We're gonna turn it all on. You can see, you can see the like swarm of drones bringing hydrogen. You can just barely see it, and everything starts to function. So I'm checking each fractionator as things start to flow. Building the second blueprint. I think I found some kind of a problem, and I'm trying to fix it here. There it is. So the left pairs, I had forgotten to get them connected up. Let's save that fix in case we ever need this blueprint again. And with that, I'm just checking that all the deuterium is flowing as it's intended. It does take a minute for the rightmost and bottommost fractionators to get going because the sorters take the hydrogen off the loop so fast that they're filling up. Excuse me. Until they fill up with 7200 and it slows down, the other ones can't get there. So with all that deuterium now available, 10,000 deuterium per minute available now in the network, it's time to build our deuterium or our Deuteron fuel rods. I'm gonna tell you, the way that the game changes the raw resource name and then the fuel rod name is very frustrating. Like, I can consistently stumble over the switch between deuterium and Deuteron fuel rod. Like, I know them, but it's a little frustrating. They should have just called it a deuterium fuel rod, and then it would be like consistent. Anyway, we're going to be putting quite a lot of deuterium on the line, and the line can handle it, but the sorters pulling resources in may not. So I'm going to put on some backwards pile sorters on the deuterium line so that they get stacked 4 high, and the sorters can pull them in more easily. But yeah, there's titanium coming from Distractus Prime. There's the blue rings coming from Better Dyson 1 that we made earlier in the episode, and now there's the deuterium available from both Gassy Steve and our fractionator rings, both the rings themselves and from the graphene plant. And as that all begins to flow in, we should be making Deuteron fuel rods, enough to support 240 small carrier rockets, or 420, excuse me, small carrier rockets per minute, which is my goal right now. With the Deuteron fuel rods complete, which they will be in a moment, we do need, I think, 3 more of this blueprint, because we need a lot of fuel rods. You can see this build makes 375 per minute, and we need over 1,000, so we're going to need to copy and paste this like 3 more times. But once the fuel rods are done, we just need, I believe, quantum chips. I think we have everything else we need. So next episode, we'll go back to real-time play, and I'll be making like Casimir crystals and plane filters and quantum chips. And it'll probably take 2 or 3 episodes to actually get to producing the carrier rockets. But after that, it's just a quick trip home to set up the launching thingamajigs, whatever they are, the launching silos. I'm not sure. You can see there, I took the deuterium from the graphene plant and put it directly into one of the blueprints. So I should probably do the same thing with my fractionator rings that I built. I don't like the 48. I don't think I did that. So I might want to go back and refactor that off camera. The other thing we're going to need is we're going to need more processors. So I'm going to go build those off camera too. But we'll be back. We'll be back to do Casimir crystals. We'll be back to do plane filters and quantum chips. And then we'll be live. You'll get to see in real time when I build the small carrier rockets. When I go back to Alwade and build the launching silos, and then when we start launching them here from Better Dyson 2 into orbit around the star. I did realize that all those fractionators and assemblers and stuff had put a serious drain on the power grid, and so I had to come over here and turn off the critical photon generation, which we weren't really using anyway. We've got a tower full of critical photons, and lay down a bunch more ray receivers to just get power. We had started draining the network, and you can see even after I put all those other ones down, we're still not quite where we need to be. So I ended up getting enough ray receivers to generate something like a gigawatt of power, and over time they get more efficient. So they're pulling in like 6, and then they'll double up to 15, like more than double to 15 if I leave them for a while. So this field of ray receivers should be fine for power for a time, but I'm probably going to rebuild them and then tear them down somewhere because due to the curvature properties of the planet, I couldn't line them up like neatly, and it's all like off kilter and ugly, and it really bothers me. So I'll probably tear that down. Like the solar panels look gorgeous. The ray receivers look like a 5th grade project. I did notice here that the titanium was coming in unproliferated, so I threw proliferators on there, and now our Deuteron fuel rod is functioning, or rather our build is functioning. Our blueprint is complete. We'll save it. We'll copy it out a few times, and then we'll have 1,344 Deuteron fuel rods per minute to pump into our small carrier rocket production when we eventually get there. Oh, here I was cleaning up some old blueprints. Blueprints that I made before I really understood how to use blueprints, how to design blueprints. Certainly, if I was doing another playthrough, I would have to build early game, mid game, and late game blueprints because you just don't have the belts and the sorters and all that good stuff. You don't have towers. So like early game blueprints would be Mark 1 belts, you know, and Mark 1 or Mark 2 sorters and miners, and like the throughput would be very low. But if you were thoughtful about it, you could make, you know, a book of early game blueprints, which would be very useful for like accelerating your ability to reach the next level, to build up your tech, to build up your infrastructure, to build your mall or whatever. But yeah, those early game blueprints were not doing me any favors, so I deleted them to get them out of my blueprint inventory. I left a few things that I do still regularly use, things I've made more recently, and you can see as I turn all of these factories on, the swarms appear to bring materials. It's very satisfying and cool. And with that, we are producing all the Deuteron fuel rods we need, so we're sort of done for the episode here. Just reviewing and making sure things are coming in as they're supposed to. And so now I'm going to show you guys real quick what we still have to do. So 420 carrier rockets per minute. We're going to need Casimir crystals, more processors. Oh, I'm so sick of making processors. And then, you know, plane filters and quantum chips. And then we can make our carrier rockets. And at that point, it's all gravy, baby. The actual sphere starts going up. So that's going to be it for this time. As always, thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this high-speed episode. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.